So the buzzword or the buzz phrase of this week seems to be toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity. What is toxic masculinity? Well, these days, it's just a man being a man. And unfortunately, weak men in governments all across the world are creating hard times for people. And I don't understand it. I can't get my head around it. But the weak, insipid, soulless, spineless men that are calling the shots for the world at the minute, it would seem, have the audacity to label anybody that speaks up against them or takes a stand against their nefarious actions as toxic. Maybe I'm toxic. Am I a toxic man? Because I call this stuff out as well. There's an interesting development in world government this week, especially in Ireland and in the UK, where yesterday both governments called for screenings in schools for a new documentary that's being shown on Netflix called Adolescence, to be shown in schools to highlight the dangers of online radicalisation for our young people. Because what? They don't have parents, that they can't parent them themselves. The school has to take that on. The state has to take that on. I'm going to show you some clips from the Dáil and also from Westminster, where both governments were parroting the same message, and both governments are ran by beta wimps. Micheál Martin, Simon Harris on one side, and Keir Starmer on the other side. What a wretched, wretched motley crew both governments are, the governments of Ireland and the governments of Britain. So let's get into this. Let's see what was said yesterday in the Dáil, and we shall take it from there.
We all saw this week, Taoiseach. We all saw this weekend the worst of toxic masculinity in Conor McGregor being invited to speak on the world stage on our National Day of celebration. People like Conor McGregor, the Irish version of Andrew Tate, promote hyper-aggressive, misogynistic and often violent forms of masculinity. As a parent, as someone who coaches underage teams, works with local schools.
He coaches underage teams. Note that.
And as a director of a local youth and community centre, I deal with a lot of young people of all ages. I know from speaking to friends and parents right across Kildare that they are very conscious of the potential impact of these social media type figures on their children. Currently on our TV screens, we see the impact depicted quite harrowingly on the new Netflix TV series Adolescence. The glorification of dominance, aggression and subjugation of women through social media must be ended.
What about what's happening on the streets of Ireland? What about the women who are getting their faces bitten? What about the women who are being brutally assaulted? What about the women who are being stabbed to death? What about the women who are being murdered? Who's doing the killing? Is it adolescents? Toxic adolescents doing the killing? In some cases, maybe. But who's doing the lion's share of the killing? Who's doing the lion's share of the raping? Who's doing the lion's share of the murdering? Young white boys? Toxically masculine white boys? Is that the problem?
I ask, what more can we do? What is the government doing?
What more can you do? Well, I would say that advising parents to show their children a Netflix documentary isn't going to kill the problem of violence against women in Ireland. I would say that for a start.
To tackle the rise of toxic masculinity and its detrimental influence.
Well, Deputy Neville is so right, and I want to thank you for the question.
This is the weakest streak of piss in any world government anywhere at the minute, and I don't apologise for my language. Look at him.
A really important topic for all of society, Laskin Corda. I think the programme Adolescence has really provided a glimpse into how toxic influences are filling a void in young men's lives. In fact, I believe Adolescence should be compulsory viewing in all our secondary schools right across this country.
Compulsory viewing in all our secondary schools across Ireland. This is what Simon Harris wants. This is what he's called for in the Dáil. A Netflix documentary depicting a young white boy who's apparently been radicalised online and goes on to allegedly commit a murder or stabs a girl to death. I haven't watched it, I've no interest in it. I don't need to see it because I'm covering murders and violent crimes every single day on this channel. And I'm not aware of any that I've covered recently that were carried out by young white boys. I'm just saying.
Social media has such an influence on young lives, and that's why I think in Europe and Ireland we need to be true to our values, even if others in the other parts of the world decide to go a different way. These so-called influencers are feeding young men a warped view of what it is to be a man.
And he's an example of what it is to be a man. This is your example of manliness. So watch this carefully, take this in. You heard the predecessor talking there, the man speaking before. Now you're listening to this wet wipe. And then you're going to hear Keir Starmer. And then you're going to hear the person that designed and constructed this program that's setting Netflix on fire. This is the problem. Too many people have got their noses on social media sites and watching fantasy programs and being programmed and then going into work or standing around the water cooler talking about it or discussing it and dissecting it down online when they should be out in the real world, getting themselves fit, getting themselves strong, bonding with other human beings, instead of listening to wet wipes like Simon Harris, who's advocating for this indoctrination nonsense to be shown in schools.
And let us be clear, the likes of Conor McGregor and Andrew Tate should not be social media influencers. They should be social pariahs. Their behaviour is wrong, it's retrograde, it's degrading, it's damaging. They're normalising behaviour that is totally and utterly unacceptable. And everybody in this house, we should speak with one voice in relation to this. Not social media influencers, social pariahs.
Social pariahs. Andrew Tate's a social pariah. Conor McGregor's a social pariah. I don't pay attention to what they really do. Okay, they come up in the news, and I've never spoke about Andrew Tate, and I probably never will. Have no interest in him. I think he's a sap also, and I think a lot of people have been taken in by him too, but each to their own. I don't need a role model. I don't need a strong male role model in my life because I'm just content the way I am. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm content the way I am. I'm comfortable with myself. I don't need to look up to anyone to get direction and guidance. I look to God alone for direction and guidance. That's it. God alone. That's just me. And you know what? It has served me well so far in my life. So far in my life. But if people want to follow social media influencers and worship social media influencers, what's that to me? It doesn't have any effect in my life. It won't affect my family's life. Okay, because I'm strong in myself. And I don't like drips like Simon Harris dictate in any way, shape or form how I should live my life. And notice the repetitive use of toxic, 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 toxic this, toxic that, toxic the other. And here he is again. Sorry, viewers, by the way, to inflict this drip on you so much, but it's important that these words are captured and these words are put out there. So we'll hear what he has to say in terms of, before we get to the British government's version of what he's just said, let's listen to his summary of the events this week at the White House and further beyond.
Not only not speak for Ireland, it doesn't only not...
Just give me a second here. You know what, rather than stop this and start it, let's get this here. Just technical issues here, but this is, I record these clips live, as it were. I don't do multiple takes. I don't splice them all together, so the volume was not how would you say, activated on that. So this is real. This is a real recording here, warts and all. So let's hear what this is Simon Harris.
Not only not speak for Ireland, he doesn't only not represent our values, he's actually the opposite of all of the values we're proud about in Ireland. He represents the very worst of toxic masculinity. And
toxic masculinity.
I think we need to be very clear on that. Donald Trump can have whoever he wants to visit him. That's a matter for him.
Yeah, Donald Trump chose a man to visit him, while you, Simon Harris, were walking the streets of New York in your raincoat, in your Frank Spencer raincoat. You're right. Donald Trump can choose to have who he wants. The most powerful man in the world, allegedly, can choose to have who he wants in his house. And he didn't choose you. You were relegated to the streets of New York in your raincoat.
But let me say in the clearest words possible, just because Conor McGregor was in the White House, he wasn't there in any way speaking for us. And I want...
Yes, he was. And you can't handle it. The way your little face screws up, your rat face screws up. He wasn't there speaking for us. He wasn't there speaking for us. Yes, he was, Simon. Yes, he was. Like it or not, deal with it.
People in the United States of America to know, and I particularly want women and girls to know that Conor McGregor doesn't represent the values of Ireland. In fact, he represents the polar opposite of what we stand for. We're a nation of inclusivity, of respect, and he epitomises the very worst of toxic masculinity.
Epitomises the worst of toxic masculinity. This is Westminster. This is another call for the British government or the British Prime Minister calling for the same television programme to be shown in British schools.
Talking about Adolescence, the series by Knowsley's own Stephen Graham and Christine Tamarco. It highlights online male radicalisation and violence against girls. The creators of the show are calling for screenings in Parliament and schools to spark change. So will the Prime Minister back this campaign to counter toxic misogyny early and give young men the role models they deserve?
Yeah. Prime Minister. Yes, and at home we are watching Adolescence with our children. I've got a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl, and it's very, very good.
Sitting on the sofa with this, watching Adolescence. Look at him flanked by Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner, the no-brainer.
Documentary to watch, or drama. This violence carried out by young men, influenced by what they see online, is a real problem. It's abhorrent.
Violence carried out by young men, by what they see on TV. Maybe he needs to address the same problem that Ireland has, the violence committed by migrants flooding into the country, unvetted, preventable crimes, multiple criminals being allowed to enter the countries. And yes, Irish men commit murders. Yes, Irish men commit stabbings. Yes, English men commit murders and stabbings. But a lot of the crime that's happening at the minute could be prevented if people like Keir Starmer and people like Simon Harris would grow a spine, have some cervical vertebrae, and say, you know what? We're not letting anyone in unless we know who they are and they can work, they can speak English, and they contribute to society. And we've housed and fed and clothed all the Irish and English people before we even entertain the thought of giving a home or giving support to people whenever our own society is crumbling.
And we have to tackle it. We are putting in specialist rape and sexual offences teams in every police force, doing work on the 999 calls. But this is also a matter of culture that I think it's important that across the whole House we tackle this emerging and growing problem.
Tell our audience.
It's a matter of culture, says Starmer. He can't even make a speech. He can't even speak his mind. He can't speak freely. It has to be written down. It has to be scripted. And even when he's reading off his script, he mumbles and he stumbles and he fumbles his words. A miserable wretch. This is the creators of the programme that they want your children and my child to see if they're in school.
About what's happened to you because of the success of Adolescence in the last few days.
Well, it's been very interesting, you know, that I've been on the television a little bit. What's been happening in the last few days is my picture is being circulated with questions as to my masculinity.
This is the person that's going to educate us on toxic masculinity. Look, this person, it's our role model for the kids in school. He constructed this.
Really?
Questions as to whether I've got too much estrogen in my system, questions as to whether I'm a man or not, weird things like people saying that I'm Jewish when I'm not. It's
what does that have to do with anything?
It's been very odd, and it's given me a taste of something that's very strange. I'm very comfortable with how I look. I don't mind it.
He's very comfortable with how he looks. Look at him grinning. He's enjoying this.
But it's been scientifically very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Comments
yes. This is something that I think is really, really important. It's This is something that I think is really, really important. It struck a chord because it's something that a lot of people are feeling. How do we help our boys? How do we
help our boys? If I had a boy, I wouldn't want you to help him, mate. No harm to you. If I had a boy, the last person I would want him to be helped by is you.
Stop girls being harmed? You know, that's a huge question for us all right now.
I sent you the clip of the Prime Minister talking about it in the comments today.
Yes.
When you realised that he'd mentioned it?
Yeah, and that he was watching it.
And that he was watching it with his kids.
And that's amazing, and it's important, and
It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. It's not amazing, and it's not important. It's pathetic. Pathetic that wet wipes like this, and wet wipes like Starmer, and wet wipes like Simon Harris are sitting dictating what the children of our nation should be watching in schools to put the message even deeper into their heads.
I hope that means we can use this moment to provoke this government to consider quite serious change.
Okay, and we're going
provoke the government to consider serious change. Yeah, governments, they absolutely need to be provoked to consider serious change at this time. It's just a crazy time in which we live. Just a crazy time. And by the way, let me be clear. Being a man, you don't have to be a fighter. You don't have to be a tough guy. You don't have to be out there causing trouble, strutting around with your chest out, your shoulders back, staring at people, giving people a hard time. That's not being a man either. Being a man is doing what's right. You know, treating people with respect, looking after your family, teaching your children how to live, what's right and wrong. Okay? Acting the man. Acting the man. Not some sap that's easily manipulated and warped and shamed into feeling, hey, what you're doing is wrong, the way you're acting is wrong. You need to get in touch with your feminine side, you need to do this. If that's what you want to do, then go ahead, but don't lecture me or anybody else for that matter, and don't try and get your claws into another generation of children and water them down even more. I'd say the problem with society at the minute is not toxic masculinity. The problem in society is diluted masculinity. You take a jar of masculinity and you keep adding and adding water and diluting it down until it's wishy-washy. I'd say the problem is we haven't got enough masculinity in our society at the minute. Hence the saying, weak men create hard times. And if you can't see that we're going through hard times at the minute, and that those hard times are the result of weak, insipid men, well, I don't know what else I can show you. But anyway, as per now, I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media. Over and out.